Hello everyone and welcome to another Commander Tactics Deck Tech. My name's Pope. In today's video we're going to be brewing around the new Boros legend from Theros Beyond Death, Haktos the Unscarred. This alternate timeline Achilles brings with him a rather outrageous ability that will enable us to go for the infamous and unreliable Voltron win. Costing red, white, we get a legendary human warrior with 6 power but only 1 toughness. Haktos must attack each combat if able, which we are totally fine with because you better believe that we are going to be throwing haymakers all game. His next line says choose randomly between the numbers 2, 3, and 4, and then after the RNG gods have blessed us with a lucky number, Haktos gain protection from every other number besides our sacred variable. Before we go any further though, a few things to cover. Number 1, Haktos does not have protection from the remainder of just 2, 3, or 4. Oh no, he has protection from every number except the one that we randomly selected. So at all times, Haktos will have protection from 0, 1, and then 5 and up in addition to the numbers we didn't select. Number 2, let's quickly talk about what protection means. So protection means it can't be blocked, enchanted, or equipped, be the target of spells or abilities, and damage that would be inflicted is prevented. This means that edict effects and board wipes that do not target Haktos specifically still get to our heals. But moving on now, this deck is all about doubling up on everything. We're going to be doubling up on as many combat steps as possible. We're going to be doubling all of our damage and possibly even our opponent's damage. And we're going to even double up on some extra turns. But wait, extra turns in Boros? You must be insane. And the answer to that is obviously yes. Yes, I am. And all this madness can be yours today for less than $150. But enough of the yakking, let's take a look at all the spells we're going to be casting to double up on our combat steps, starting things off with Relentless Assault and Fury of the Horde. Both of these spells have the same text saying untap all creatures that attacked this turn. After this main phase, there's an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Relentless Assault only costs 4 mana, but Fury of the Horde does cost the 7 mana. Luckily it has the clause, we can exile 2 red cards from our hand rather than pay this cost. Extra combat steps are pivotal for taking Haktos' Voltron killing capability from a 4-turn clock to a 3-turn clock, assuming we have no other factors involved. Next up we have Savage Beating and Response Resurgence. Savage Beating costing 3 and 2 red says you can play this only during your turn and only during combat. Says creatures you control gain double strike until the end of turn, or untap all creatures you control, and after this phase there's an additional combat phase, but we can entwine it for an additional 2 mana. Using Savage Beating on an unblocked Haktos means that we are going to one-shot an opponent, dealing them double strike of the 6 damage, so that's 12 damage, an additional combat phase for another 12 damage, and that's 24 commander damage all in one turn. Then we have Response Resurgence. The flexibility of Response to deal a 5 damage to an attacking or blocking creature is great, but really we're going to be using the Resurgence side. This says, creatures you control gain First Strike and Vigilance until the end of turn. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. A super strong effect on a super budget card makes this a must include. Then we have a few creatures going to help us get that additional combat phase in as well, with Combat Celebrant, Hellkite Charger, and Aurelia the War Leader. Combat Celebrant says that if Combat Celebrant hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. When you do, untap all of the creatures you control, and after this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. And for exerting, it says an exerted creature won't untap during your next untap step. One way we can get around the exertion of Combat Celebrant is if we do use it in cooperation with a spell like Relentless Assault that says untap all creatures that attacked this turn. That will get around it and enable us to exert it again the very next turn. Hellkite Charger, the big dragon for 6 mana, has flying, has haste. Whenever it attacks, we can pay 7 mana, so a little hefty, but it says if you do, untap all attacking creatures, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Huge body with a great effect, great card to have. And then we have Aurelia, the War Leader, for 2 generic, 2 red, and 2 white. We have a flying Vigilance Haste Angel that says whenever she attacks for the first time each turn, we get to untap all creatures we control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. With all these awesome creatures and awesome spells giving us additional combat steps, there is a real capability that we will be looking at 3 or 4 combat steps each turn if our board doesn't get disrupted. And then lastly, we have the baddest mother in the land with Etali Primal Storm. This Elder Dinosaur, a pet card of mine, one of my favorites, gonna go off if we get to attack with him on multiple combat steps. Etali says whenever Etali attacks, we're gonna exile the top card of each player's library. Then we can cast any one of those cards for free without paying its mana cost, assuming it's a non-land. I love this card, and I will add it into any red deck because it's just so strong. Okay, well maybe not every red deck, but you get the point. Now we know how our combat's gonna work. Let's take a look at all the damage doublers we're gonna be running to help us turn that clock up even higher on Haktos' Voltron kills. Starting things off with Furnace of Wrath, Dictate of the Twin Gods, and Gratuitous Violence. All 3 of these enchantments have a similar effect, doubling the damage that would be dealt to a permanent or player. Furnace of Wrath says if a source would deal damage to any creature or any player, this includes us, it deals double that damage. Dictate of the Twin Gods, exactly the same thing except it has flash. And Gratuitous Violence, this one's a little bit better for us, but it says if a creature you control would deal damage to a creature or player, it deals double that damage instead. So this one can't come back to hurt us, and it's only creatures. Definitely be mindful of the board state whenever you cast any one of these spells, because there is a real chance it could just backfire. Then we have 2 more enchantments with True Conviction and Berserker's Onslaught. Gonna give our creatures double strike. True Conviction for 3 and triple white gives our creatures double strike and lifelink. And Berserker's Onslaught for 3 and 2 red, gonna give all attacking creatures we control double strike as well. All we truly care about is getting that clock on Haktos' Voltron kills to be a little closer to a 2-turn kill, and both of these spells are going to help us get it done. Next up, we have a creature and an instant to help us double down again with Silverblade Paladin and Boros Charm. Silverblade Paladin has Soul Bond, so you can pair this with a creature whenever it enters, or whenever it enters itself, we can pair it to another creature on the board, and as long as it is paired with another creature, both of those creatures are going to have double strike. And Boros Charm coming in with some flexibility, we can either have it deal 4 damage to a player, give our permanents indestructible until the end of turn, or give a creature double strike. All of these utilities are great for us. In the instance where we need to protect our creature, Haktos, we can give it indestructible should there be a board wipe or something. Boros Charm can deal 4 damage to a player, so if we have some double down effects, we can double that to 8 damage to a player. Or in the instance where the CMC that Haktos does not have protection from happens to be 2, Boros Charm can target him and give him double strike. Do keep in mind though, if you don't roll exactly 2, you won't be able to target him with this, but you can absolutely target one of our other creatures. And then lastly, a few more spells to take that Voltron clock up a notch. Torbran, Thane of Redfell, Sublime Archangel, and Angelic Exaltation. Torbran, one of my favorite new cards from Throne of Eldraine, says if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much +2. So this is going to make our Haktos start hitting for 8, making it a 3-turn clock instead of 4. And then Sublime Archangel for 2 and 2 white, we get this Flying Angel, 4/3 body, so nothing to fret about. Exalted, whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature is going to get +1/+1 until end of turn. And other creatures you control have Exalted, so every creature we have on the field is going to give an instance of +1/+1 to that solo attacking creature. And lastly, Angelic Exaltation. This enchantment says whenever a creature you control attacks alone, so almost exalted, it gets +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So really this is just a better instance of exalted. If we do have multiple creatures on the board, it is going to pump Haktos up a ton. But now we've seen the double combat, we've seen the double damage, let's take a dive into what I think is the coolest part of this deck, and that is the double turns. Starting things off with Final Fortune, Last Chance, and Chance for Glory. You're going to notice these are insane extra turn spells because we lose the game at the next end step, but we will have ways to get around that. Final Fortune says take another turn after this one. You lose the game at the end step of that turn. Keep in mind though, Final Fortune is an instant, so we can cast this in between turns. Last Chance says take another turn after this one. You lose the game at the end of that turn. And then Chance for Glory says creatures you control gain indestructible, take an extra turn after this one, and at the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. Simply having that extra turn can get us the win with Haktos, but in the case where we can't end the game, we need to get around that you lose clause, so that's how we're going to do it with things like Sundial of the Infinite and Glorious End. Sundial of the Infinite, this artifact for only 2 mana, we can pay 1 and tap it, and it says end the turn. Activate this ability only during your turn, but when we do that, it's going to exile all spells and abilities on the stack, therefore meaning we won't go to our end step and lose the game. We also discard down to hand size and damage would wear off. And if we have an additional turn coming up after this, well, Sundial's going to untap and we're going to get to abuse it and do it again. And Glorious End, a similar effect. For 2 and a red, we get an instant, so a one-time shot says end the turn. The beauty of this effect is that we can use this to just simply end our opponent's turn before they can even do anything. But again, at the beginning of your next end step, you lose the game. So we need to make sure we're either going to 1, win outright, or 2, Sundial of the Infinite to make sure we don't lose at that end step. If for some reason Sundial does get blown up though, well, just be ready to scoop them cards up. This is a very janky, high risk, high reward play, but when you do get it to go off, it is so beautiful. And to truly capitalize on all the additional turns, we're going to duplicate them with spells like Reverberate and Increasing Vengeance. These 2 spells say copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Reverberate lets us copy our opponents if we want to, and Increasing Vengeance only lets us copy ours. The beautiful thing about this is that Increasing Vengeance can be cast for its flashback cost, and if it is, we get to copy it twice. But maybe the game has gone long and we've run out of gas in the tank, well, we're just going to do it all again using spells like Past in Flames and Underworld Breach. Both of these spells are going to enable us to cast our extra turns and our extra copies from our graveyard to do it all over again and close games out. Past in Flames says each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, and then we can flash it back itself to do this all again. And Underworld Breach, a similar effect but utilizing the new escape mechanic. For 1 and a red, each non-land card in your graveyard, so everything except lands, has escape, and the escape cost is equal to its mana cost, plus we have to exile 3 other cards. If we sequence these cards right, we are going to be casting a ton of spells, duplicating them, taking a ton of turns, and just being able to win games right on the spot. But now we've seen most of the ins and outs, let's take a look at the breakdown and what else is inside the 99. Our removal and control comes in the form of about 11 different spells, many of which are board wipes because Haktos will not be affected by those board wipes. Card draw and advantage in this deck also looking good. We've got about 8 to 9 different spells going to help us keep our hand full. Our ramp always solid, using lots of mana rocks because we're only in red and white, but we've got 10 spells. And the power level of this deck I put at a 6, and here's why. This deck runs a lot of kind of janky combos, but the main problem you're going to run into is you are going to kill 1, maybe 2 opponents, but then probably get taken out of the game. It truly is a challenge to round out games using the Voltron method, but nevertheless, we're going to have a hell of a time doing it. And winning with this deck boils down to one strategy and one strategy alone, and that is commander damage with Haktos. We don't really have a plan B, so in the instance where Haktos gets taken out multiple times, we are probably going to be in trouble. So in order to triple down on this, we're taking extra combats, extra turns, and dealing that extra damage to try to win as fast as we can. Some budget alternatives that I absolutely considered for this deck: Loyal Unicorn, Molten Disaster, and Boros Reckoner. Each of these going to support our commander damage strategy and either help us keep the board clear, pump up our commander a little more, or help us do a ton of damage to an opponent all at one time. And then some upgrades: Waves of Aggression, Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, and Grand Abolisher. Waves of Aggression is going to be another extra combat step, and the beauty of this card is that it can be cast over and over with its retrace ability that says you may play this card from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to its mana cost. Gisela is a very powerful creature for 7 mana that is going to double the damage that we do and half the damage that we receive. And then Grand Abolisher, going to help us keep our board safe on our turn by making sure our opponents can't cast spells, activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments on our turns. All 3 of these spells would be amazing includes, so if you do have them, definitely run them. And the last thing I wanted to share with you guys is we did conclude our giveaway for the Bitter Blossom Dreams goods that we opened up a couple weeks back. So congrats to those winners. You have all been contacted, and thanks so much to everyone who got involved, participated. Without your guys' support, comments, likes, everything like that, we truly wouldn't be where we are now, and it gives us a lot of motivation to keep going. So thanks so much, and we look forward to doing some more giveaways in the future. But that will bring us to the end step of this deck tech, Haktos the Unscarred. What a madman. This deck is absolutely nuts. It will have your group saying, what the heck is happening? You're in Boros. Why are you taking extra turns? Why did you just kill me on turn 4? I love it so much. Maybe my favorite deck tech in quite some time. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you did though, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you share it with some friends, tell them about it, let them know what you're bringing to the table next week. If you want to hit us up on Twitter at EDH Tactics, you can go over there, see what content we're dropping. And of course, thanks to everyone who continues to like, comment, share, and subscribe. New video comes your way every Friday, so stay tuned for our next one. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you for the next one.